really well. I am doing really, really well. I was about to say how nice the weather is here, but maybe I'll just not.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Oops.
That's okay.
Sorry, everybody else around the entire country.
Yeah. Oh man. Yep. Hey everyone, we've got Umbra, Bad Panda Bear, Christoph, Taib, and Professor Noor. Hello. If you're there as well, even if you're not, oh Cairo, excellent. Nunca. Um, so we are going to this is our Star Trek Sunday brunch. If you haven't been here before, we are discussing Deep Space Nine episodes with Samantha, who is watching them for the very first time. Hello, Samantha. And we are well into season 4 now. We are nearly at the end of it. So we are in the thick of things. So just a reminder to everyone in the chat, there are opportunities in these discussions to spoil things for Samantha, and we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. I know it's hard, but we don't want to ruin those surprises. So
please.
Yeah.
I mean, anything cryptic is fine, but like actual spoilers, please try to avoid.
Yeah. Try to avoid, because she's guessing some stuff and it's really fun. So, all right. So the episodes we're going to be discussing today are Crossfire, Return to Grace, Sons of Mogh, Bar Association, Accession, and Rules of Engagement. So these are some doozies. We have opinions. You ready to just kick it off?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Oh, hi, Kishore. Happy to see you here. Yes. Rules of Engagement will be interesting. They're all going to be interesting. But we're going to start with Crossfire here. So this is the episode where the Bajoran First Minister, Shakar, visits Deep Space Nine, to discuss Bajor's proposed membership in the Federation. There is a threat on his life by these members of the True Way, which are a Cardassian extremist group. Kira and Shigar start badonkadonking, and which makes Odo sad. And after what I think is an adorable scene between Quark and him, he is recommended to sever his relationship with Kira, which is heartbreaking. Yay!
So sad.
Thank you, Astro.
So sad.
Yeah, so sad. Daib said, poor Odo, never seen him so unprofessional. And Astro, yep, the poor Odo episode.
Yeah.
So, what'd you think of this one?
This was heartbreaking. It was, I think I texted you halfway through the episode. It's like, Odo just got friend zoned. And it's so sad. It was funny though that the episode kind of played out like just like a Odo's trying to do all these like high school moves to like spend time with Kira. He's looking forward to their meeting, not just because it's business, but because he's with Kira, and it's like that's what you feel like in high school. He's got all these like awkward ways of trying to make time for her, and yeah. she when she responds like toward the middle of the episode when like she comes to the meeting and she's late, and then he's like, okay, well, we've got our meeting and here's your thing, and do you want your Raktajino? And she's like, oh, actually, sorry, I have to run to show the station to Shakar on the tour. And he's like, oh okay, like, because they're both seeing this meeting in such a different way, and
yeah,
that was so sad.
It's so sad. Everyone agrees with you. And yeah, so oh my gosh, lots of awesome comments here. The scene with Odo and Quark, the highlight of the episode. Kishore mentioned this is one of those episodes where we really start to love Quark because he's so kind of Odo in his own way. Lots of relatability. I think Quark calls him on his nonsense, which is awesome and adorable.
Yeah, Quark's like the best friend I'm just going to keep going with this high school analogy.
Go for it. Yeah, because Daib mentioned this is John Hughes in space, so continue carrying that on.
Right. I totally thought of a little bit later than John Hughes, but the scene that I just mentioned where Kira's like, oh, I got to go show him the station and see you later, Odo, good friend, it's like that is the exact scene in The Princess Diaries when Mia decides to go to the beach party instead of going to Michael's garage to hear him play. She's like, I'll just hear your band play next week. We're just friends, right? And I'm like, oh.
We never forgave Mia for that one.
We did not.
No.
We did not. But that was exactly what I thought. It was like basically the same scene.
Yeah, it's so tragic. It's so tragic. And I think, too, mentioned, like, where Daib said, then then Shakar goes to him for advice, which is like just that extra twist.
Right, exactly. You're a good friend of Kira's.
Oh. Just no, not okay. Yeah, loving that scene at the end where Odo is putting the soundproofing in his floor. Just amazing. Yeah. So sweet.
They're such an odd couple. It's great.
It's so good. Yeah, so you kind of were surprised when we started watching Deep Space Nine, and I think I made some comment about how much I love Kira and Odo, and you're like, don't see it. Like, are we on the shipping train now?
We're at the station.
Okay.
We haven't hopped on the train.
Right.
But we've maybe watched a couple go by. Yeah. And we might be ready to hop on the next one.
We might be. Okay, I've waved past like 5 times because I'm fully on board with that. Yeah, checking ticket prices. There you go. Yeah, and then Professor Noor asked me to comment on the physics of Odo stopping the elevator. So again, for that scene where people may not remember, Odo basically the elevator starts dropping because they were trying to Shakar in theory, and he like shapeshifts into like pylons and basically like drives out the walls to slow them down. I mean, fair play. Because you physics, you just try to create that friction, and I would think that they'd have fail-safes against that, but we don't have the technology of those turbolifts. But they were falling for a while, so again,
they were
size scales on Deep Space Nine. It's a big station. Astro mentioned watching The Odd Couple in Space with Quark and Odo. We would love to see that.
Yes, spin-off series, please.
Yeah, and I think, well, sorry, just so the last. Before I forget, like, I think the thing that works so well with Odo, because Todd mentioned that Odo, in a lot of ways, is very, like, emotionally an adolescent. Like, I think he does a great thing, too. Like, in every Star Trek series, we have this trope where there's a character or 2 characters who are trying to become more human, who are trying to discover humanity, because it's a great allegory for these storytelling. And I think that's like, this is a clear scene where Odo is filling that role. He's like navigating romantic relationships as you do when you're a teenager. And
yes, exactly.
Tragedy happens. So
tragedy. Oh, just my heart. So back to that scene in the elevator, though, there's that moment when Worf calls through to give the command codes or something like that, right? But it doesn't actually, he doesn't give them, or he does, or there's something where it's like, it wasn't Worf.
They had like modulated his voice. Like they had, they had basically forged his voice for those commands, essentially. Yeah. Right.
Which I guess they figured that out, but my whole thing was like, why didn't they even assume or throw in Changeling in the mix? Like, why were they like, oh, this is clearly the sabotage was the voice manipulation, not a Changeling doing it?
That's a great question. Like, I don't have an answer. That's a great question. That's a great observation. Because they do seem to drop that Changeling fear. And I guess when you binge these, because they haven't had that Changeling, I mean, when was the last? It was definitely in the last set, but it wasn't like the last episode that we watched where they had like had the suspicions of changelings, and that they that's a good question.
Okay.
I mean, they were doing those blood tests. Maybe they've let their guards down with that.
They were doing blood tests, and there was also like a short scene like 2 sets of episodes ago where they were doing like drills with Odo on the station to like catch changelings. So they like were doing these routine things. So anyway, I just thought it was interesting that that was not a part of this particular episode.
Great observation. I think Daib said, I think they dropped it because Worf found evidence of who it was, so there was no need. So the first jump for any sabotage is that it may be changelings, but Worf was already on who had been doing that. So yeah, I mean, I think that works. Good job, team. But it's a good question. That didn't even occur to me because I'm very bad at like critically watching things like this sometimes because I just get really into the story I'm being fed at that moment.
Right.
So, no, I think it's really good. And just speaking of Worf, him and Odo have just some adorable kind of moments in this one.
Is this the one where they're like bonding over like having rules and
having to talk to people? Yeah, where they're basically like, oh, I would never, you could just drop by. And he's like, I would never do that. He's like, thank you.
Yeah. It's like when you meet other introverts, it's like, you don't like people? I don't like people. Friends.
And so you mentioned the line where they were like, yeah, don't make them feel welcome.
Yeah. Exactly. I've never felt more in tune with Worf than that scene.
Yeah, exactly. It was so cute. Yeah, lots of people can relate to that. I think that's awesome. Okay, any last ones in this? Just sad Odo episode. This is the sad Odo Kira episode. That's
I think we can move on.
Okay. So the next one was Return to Grace, where Cardassian officer Gul Dukat, who is currently in disgrace because of his half-Bajoran daughter Zial, is now been demoted, and he basically strikes back over the Klingons about objections to the government. This is pretty much a follow-up to the episode Indiscretion that we discussed last time, where they find that he has this daughter and that she exists, and he kind of chooses her over his station on Cardassia. If people haven't been here for our recent discussions, Samantha and I do not agree on Gul Dukat. But we are welcoming of everyone's opinions, and we are not shaming anyone for why they may like Gul Dukat, but it's we do not necessarily see eye to eye. When we talk about being at the station, Samantha is waving at me, watching past on the Gul Dukat train.
I think it's clearly Samantha and all of DS9 fandom are not on the same station at this point.
It's okay. You are not alone. I promise you are not alone in this. It's not a ton yet.
Yes, thank you, Astro. Exactly. And this was another puzzle piece that still did not quite turn me over to another side or anything, but it was, I don't know.
That's my first question when we're at Gul Dukat episodes is like, just how do you feel about him now?
Yeah, I know. I still like him. I still don't mind him. And I'm just going to say that.
We do get to see some interesting character development with him where he is demoted and he is trying to prove his like worth. And yeah.
I still like him as a character. I think he's super interesting and he's got a lot of different shades, but I also don't trust him. So
smart. It's that I'll give you credit for.
So it's like Garrick, but Garrick I actually like and trust more. And so with Gul Dukat, when it's like he says he's demoted, so I was like, oh, this can't be good. That's gonna like turn a switch in his psychopathic brain, and he's gonna become super evil and all this stuff. And yeah, narcissistic, and all that. So there's certain things there to like not be super enthusiastic about. And then when he was trying to like flirt with Kira and stuff, I was like, I want to like this, but I don't. Something about this is off.
Good instincts. That's the creep factor that needs to be factored in here. That and they just on the behind the scenes side, and I mentioned this in the past as well, but they talked about in the documentary how like the actor who played Gul Dukat, and let's just separate those for a moment here, that the actor who played Gul Dukat really wanted to hook up with Nana Visitor, and who plays Kira. And Nana was like, hail to the no, and shut down that like plot line. Because he was like pushing for that plot. She's like, no. But so that creep factor that you're getting, I think, is behind the scenes ickiness that's coming through that you have good instincts for.
Interesting.
Yes.
So you mean the actor didn't want to hook up with Nana? He wanted Gul Dukat to hook up with Kira.
Well, because the actor didn't have a shot with Nana outside of the storyline, so he thought
that's even worse.
Yeah. There's a whole ick factor there, but again, we are talking about the actor, not necessarily the character, and I'm still just curious because I think all I'm trying to say is I think you're picking up on the behind the scenes grossness of the situation. Whereas like where the character is in the storyline is still interesting. So it's like he's trying to make that happen and it doesn't quite work. And like I had mentioned before, I think the writers were like toying with that a little bit, and then there's like that whole factor going in there. But
they're clearly toying with it. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
So it's just weird. But we move past that. That doesn't.
We move.
I suppose that's one spoiler I'm not ashamed to give you, is that you're not going to have to see that happen. Let's just be perfect.
Okay.
But right. I do think it's an interesting character development for Gul Dukat and him. I think you put in the notes here about just being very weak and that he's trying to,
Yeah. So clearly he's feeling emasculated, like, and I think on a very basic level, like that's just what it is. And he wants to blow up this Klingon ship that they either find or are trailing, and it's like not shooting back at them or something, but he still wants to destroy it so that he can prove himself to his superiors again, that kind of thing. But I find these sorts of storylines very interesting, where somebody who was in a position of power gets sort of completely demoted and completely lose all of that sense, and clearly he's somebody who puts a lot of stock in his own characters, is connected to power and having it, and so when he doesn't have it, it's a real struggle to be okay in that situation, and just trying to get it back by any means necessary. And I think that's always fascinating to watch.
Yeah, so I agree. Let's talk then about Zial. And it's like, because I think there's a couple of sort of comments of like how his treatment of Zial is like a good factor of Dukat, but then I think you got a note here about like trying to figure out where that relationship stands.
Yeah, I'm glad that I'm not sure I can pronounce your username, Kletchner?
Oh, Christoph, yeah.
Christoph. That I had that same thought, though, about his treatment of Zial being the only good thing about him, but also wondering if it's just another form of manipulation. Like, I still can't figure out if the true, not good, but true Dukat treats his daughter, like if there's no manipulation factor to that at all, or if he's just somebody who manipulates as second nature.
Yeah.
So, but I like her. I like Zial. She's awesome.
Yeah, we like Zial, and I love her relationship with Kira and how we get to see those seeds very I think they organically form. Like, they just really have a good chemistry together, and it's just really sweet. Totally. And it's a nice storyline.
I love it.
Yeah, we like Zial. And then this is the first appearance of Damar, and so he's the Cardassian who's the second in command. We will see him again.
Okay.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a whole lot in this episode particularly, other than he just answers to Gul Dukat. But you'll see him again for sure. And yeah, Casey Biggs. And we will have some Kanar with Damar. This is true. This is fair. Kanar being a Cardassian drink. That's awesome. Sorry, I was I was just catching up on the chat. But yes. All right. Any other comments on this one? There's a lot of love for Damar.
Okay.
Without spoiling anything. But
I do not have an opinion right now, but
we will drink Kanar with Damar at some point.
Okay.
And the actor throws the cocktail parties on the Star Trek cruise. Well,
excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, he does mixology classes on the Star Trek cruise, as one does. All right. Anywho, okay, the next episode we're going to talk about is Sons of Mogh, Klingons. So Worf gets a visit by Brother Kern, who is trying to escape the dishonor of their family. Worf basically tries to kill him and perform this ritual for an honorable death, and they get interrupted. And then the solution they get for that is to erase his memory. And it's horrible and tragic. And this is a pretty intense episode.
Yeah. This took a turn I was not expecting.
Oh, yeah?
At the end. Yeah, did not expect that. And it was emotional. But also Klingons.
Yeah, and I think, Jedi, hi. Just families are complicated.
Yep.
And poor Kern, being a family member of Worf is not good. And the Worf storyline is, and has always been, amazing, heart-wrenching, and infuriating. It's... and I think Professor Noor makes a good point. The plot is really good in this, but there's a lot of passive-aggressive dialogue that goes on. People, because these are our friends, and we love the friends on Deep Space Nine, and there's a lot of butting heads in this episode that is very stressful.
Yeah.
Any particular thoughts?
Okay, well, first of all, we can talk about Worf stuff, but Jadzia and Worf, that gets floated in the cold open?
No spoilers. Everyone shut up. No commentary on Jadzia and Worf, but awesome. I'm here for this, and I think you are too.
I am, but I also was not expecting it at all.
Yeah.
It came out of the blue, but also felt natural, which is really hard to do. So
right.
Props.
Good. Awesome.
I'm just gonna hold my hand over the chat for a second.
Ignore the chat. It's fine. And although people are Cairo and Sky have mentioned a couple things in here about Alexander, and where Worf comments. So at the very end, the tragic ending, and where he basically has his memory wiped and then says to Worf, "Are you part of my family?" And Worf responds, "I have no family." And everyone's like, is Alexander okay? But what I wonder, and I think this is kind of like what Sky was going to, is more along the lines of when he's talking about he has no family in the Worf family circle of shame. Anyone who's been wounded by the Klingon honor code by being associated with him don't exist anymore because Alexander is removed from that. Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what I felt as well. But it's just the Klingon honor thing. It's just so exhausting because it's like they just manipulate it and talk, and anything could happen and they'd be like, that was not honorable. Then the same exact thing could happen in another context and they'd be like, that was honorable. And it was like, it just, how do they wake up in the morning being like, I could have woken up more honorably.
I should do that again. I need to eat my breakfast more honorably. I could do that again. I could do that with a lot more honor. It's like,
well, and remember too, it just, what you just did reminded me so much of Mariner at the beginning of Lower Decks, where she's really drunk with the bat'leth. It's just like, honor, honor, I demand honor. Yeah, now he really drives home why they made that joke, because this is true. But yeah, Sky mentioned that B'Elanna can relate to Klingon honor being exhausting, so this is that whole energy.
And it's all of that. Yeah. There was other thing I was going to say.
And Imilaric makes a good point. Sorry, I was just saying that the complexities of honor is like Vulcans with logic, that we just have these like hard drive things that Vulcans can sometimes be super blinded by their logic. And
yeah, but that's more linear to me. That makes more sense with Vulcans and logic, is that it's like the times when they slip and don't, aren't super logical, make more sense than the Klingons. It's like the way like every situation could either be honorable or dishonorable, depending on how they want it to be in that time, or depending how they want to put the other person down for not being honorable. It's like,
well, and just to give some context for people in the chat, you haven't seen the original series or Enterprise, which is where I think the Vulcan logic code comes in a lot more in a frustrating aspect that's very similar to the Klingons. But yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. It's we're going to use honor here and not here, and yeah.
But it's the same thing that happened. I don't know. Anyway, yeah. It's not my favorite thing.
Fair enough.
But this episode, there was some interesting moments of Worf accepting the his human upbringing and his human side, and the fact that he's been around humans, and really sort of talk about exhaustion, trying to fit into two different worlds all the time. And I thought he'd been doing pretty well up to this point, but this episode was really like, okay, I have to address and move and accept that here, this is where I am. I'm in the Federation. I'm around humans. It felt very like next step of Worf accepting where he is and who he is.
Right, and that's where, and I think, and thank you to the chat for being not spoilery. I will try to warn Samantha if you need to cover it up.
I pulled the screen across the chat for a little while.
Okay.
So I missed a bunch of stuff.
But the whole concept, though, of like, that's where I think the Jadzia aspect is working very well in these scenes, because Worf like finds kinship with someone who's not. It's like he can allow himself to be Klingon with Jadzia, with the Curzon thing, because like without having to deal with all the other shame and weight that the Klingon society puts on
exactly on yeah, that's a really good point. I feel like that's why they work so well together, as friends or whatever. It just, you're exactly right.
Yeah, and then there's just some good interactions here. Like Baka kicked it off talking about like how an honor-based society in real life is very difficult to sustain, because you can almost always justify killing someone. You can always find some way to find honor in that, and that inherently makes it unstable. But that's interesting. Yeah. But I mean, I love me my Klingons.
I know.
They're a hot mess, but like they are the people to party with and look out for. As long as you're in the society, it's great. And
right.
As I've mentioned many times, Klingons in the show versus Klingons in the convention circuit. If you're ever, I always give people the advice, if you're going to a convention for the first time and you're lost or need help, find the Klingons. They will help you.
Find the Klingons.
Yeah. And yes, our good friend Laurel is good to party
only
with.
Only if you have honor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Okay, so any more on this one. This is just, it's a tragic, it's very sad. It's very sad. And Tony Todd is back again. Phenomenal actor as Kern, but we had seen him before as well in The Visitor, and just he breaks our hearts. He's very, very good. All right. I love this next episode. We're going to have so much fun with this one. So the next episode
was awesome.
We're talking about, so the next episode is Bar Association. Whoop, whoop. Rom starts a union. That's pretty much all we need to know about this one. Comes up against Quark and the Ferengi Commerce Authority. And it's just fabulous. This is just you had mentioned, for the context, again, for people watching, that we have, you've started to see this growth of Rom's character, and I feel like this is peak Rom's growth. Like, this is just fabulous episode that we get. But yeah, it's pretty good. Anyway, what'd you think?
Yeah. Oh my God. It was so much fun to watch. Just the perfect accumulation of Rom's, like, starting to gain more confidence, and like these little moments of standing up to Quark, and just, it was the perfect Rom, like, just the perfect Rom episode. And I don't know, I mean, Quark was interesting in this one too. It was all about Rom, but Quark's reaction and it's sort of like shell-shockedness at the end, I was like, yeah, you learned a lesson here. And but yeah, a great episode. I don't know what else to say.
I have to share that your notes in this is just all caps, Rom is amazing.
That was basically the only note I had.
There's a lot of love here. And also, right when we were transitioning, Newly put in a great comment just about Worf, that he not only isn't only Klingon with a lot of Federation influence, and Gen Z is basically the same thing but opposite. It's like a lot coming from the Federation but with a little bit of Klingon. So I just thought that was a really good note. I didn't get a chance to highlight that. But yeah, I mean, this is just freaking such a good episode. And I do think, like you said, even though Quark is a side character in this, that it's really Rom's story, he does have that huge pivot, because it is, we have to admit, it is hilarious when they go to Quark and they tell him they're forming a union, and he just laughs. And he does that great gifable scene where he's like, and then just bursts out in laughter. And it's basically like, yeah, well, that's funny, guys. And then, but then, he never agrees with Rom at any point with the union, or trying to, he just never supports it. But it's like, he's still his brother. And that's where it's like, I think that it's hilarious. Like, okay, first of all, we all know I love Jeffrey Combs in everything that man touches is just gold. So Jeffrey Combs plays Brunt, Liquidator Brunt from the Ferengi Commerce Authority. And, but the thing is it's like, you learn to appreciate how the Ferengi sustain their society, because like they get you where it hurts, and they will shut down any nonsense so fast. And the fact that like Brunt attacked Quark because he knew that would get Rom to stop was just like pure mafia nonsense. Like that was that was crazy.
And they shove a lot into this, allegorically. They've got the union, which I love, which is like a bad word. Like
I know.
They're like trying to say and everyone's like, whoa. But so they've got that. They're doing picket lines. They've got a strike breaker. They've got like the FCA FCA like coming in being all like a mob boss. So like, I mean, they pack a lot in here about workers' rights. I mean,
to the extent that he literally is reading from Marx. It's just so funny. It's just so funny. And they do. I also love, because we've commented before on how like, and I always think that this is the strength of Deep Space Nine, is the amount of characters and depth of characters, and when you're able to combine them in different ways to show how strong they actually are. But like O'Brien and Rom's interactions in this episode are great, and I just love it so much. It's so good. Yeah. So
good. Yeah, and I love that, like, it was Bashir who initially said, "Oh, you guys should form a union." And then Rom comes back and he's like, "We did it! Now what?" And Bashir's like, "I was speaking metaphorically," or like,
yeah.
I didn't mean for you to actually do it. He's like, "Oh shit." And then O'Brien just jumps in.
Yeah. My great ancestor from Pennsylvania organizing the miners. And then it was like, and then he throws in that great thing about how he like, then they dug his body out of the river, like riddled with bullet holes. And Rom is like, what? Like, well, but he died honorably, you know?
Yeah.
What have I got into?
So funny.
It's so good. But just, what happened to your ancestor? Oh, they killed him. He died a Union man. It's just, so good. So can we talk again, chat, try to be at least a little not too spoilery about Lita. But Lita, the Dabo girl, I thought this was a great episode for her, and to show her relationship with Rom, that she is, I think someone mentioned, Cairo mentioned this in the chat, like, that Lita is really genuinely proud of him, and he doesn't really have that validation that much, and it's really sweet to see. Like, she genuinely cares.
It is sweet, and I mean, I don't have any strong opinions about her, to be honest. We haven't seen a lot of her, so there wasn't a lot there for me. But anybody who gives Rom that sort of motivation and support to me, like, I felt the same about Bashir and O'Brien in this episode, when they're like, helping him make this happen, and giving him advice and stuff. So any of those interactions with Rom, I'm really excited about.
It's very sweet. Yeah. And, I love it. And also, Mikhail mentioned that it was Chase Masterson's birthday yesterday. Yay!
Oh,
so, that's who plays
happy birthday.
We love Chase. So let's talk about Worf briefly in this episode. Before we talk about the ending, because Worf really is struggling. He's really struggling. He officially does not like Deep Space Nine. I think we can establish at this point. He does not. Yes. Worf does not enjoy living on Deep Space Nine. Which I understand that level of chaos would be a lot. He is not a merry man.
Not a merry man.
Yes. And so he, like, which is interesting, because I feel like he had these great moments with Odo where it was like he felt like he might be able to actually make it work, but then with all that conflict with the previous episode, he's just like, I can't handle this. And then he does have a couple great scenes with O'Brien, like when O'Brien and Bashir are taking bets on like who's gonna, cross the picket line essentially and like go into court, and then him and O'Brien just end up in a huge fight. Worf and O'Brien end up in a huge fight, and then
which we don't even see. That was so bizarre. We don't even see the fight, and it's like cuts to the next scene with Cisco. It was a weird jump cut. Yeah,
but then I love it. Like, I think they did such a good job retroactively, like explaining it when they're walking through the bar together, and O'Brien and Worf are like apologizing, and they're like, "Well, it wasn't really a fight. Like, I shoved you, you shoved me, and Bashir got thrown over a table." Yeah.
No, like, yep, that's exactly how it would happen.
Yeah, that's 100% right.
I believe that this occurred.
Yeah, I agree, Baka. Like, I found that really, really funny. I just thought that was hilarious. Yeah. Oh, Brendan, thanks for the follow. Anyway.
This is where Worf moves to the Defiant, right?
Yep, yeah, the end of this episode. And he's basically tells O'Brien that he's moving. And O'Brien's reaction is really sweet. He's like, aren't you gonna be lonely on there? And he's like, yep.
I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. Or he's like, but there's no one on the Defiant. And he's like, I know. So, he figures it out. And Cairo, I was trying to think. I think that is this episode. It may have been the next one. No, it was this episode where Odo, like, Worf goes in and he's like, this never would have happened on the Enterprise. And Odo's like, well, actually. Well.
Total well, actually moment.
Yeah, and he's like, and so if you think that, like, the flagship of the Federation still had those things, what do you think is going to happen on this little, you know... I love Deep Space Nine. I just love this station just as a character. Yeah. Like, it's just so sweet.
It's so good.
And then we get Rom's big character moment at the end.
Yeah. I was sort of pleasantly surprised that happened, because, like, it seems like to me that sort of plot point of somebody, you know, and particularly in an episodic show, like, I'm gonna leave the bar and I'm gonna do my own thing, and he would go, like, to every other department and, like, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do this, maybe I can do this, and then at the end he, like, comes back to, at the end of the episode he would have come back to Quarks, and it would just been like that's the button of the episode, and then, you know, the next episode they don't talk about that happened. But this was, like, different. I was like, wow, he actually is, like, doing his own thing now. And I thought it was really cool.
It's such a great interaction too, when he comes in and sits down and he's like, I'll have a drink, and Quark's like, you're not drinking on the job, and he's like, is that any way to talk to a paying customer? It's so good. I love it.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
And about time too.
Yeah. And I think that just stepping back and thinking of it from a broad storyline, I think they did a great job with, like, the fact that it's like, we've talked about how Rom is a great engineer and does fix things for Quark. Then the fact, though, that we have, like, the chief engineer be the one who's kind of helping Rom. It's like, now we get to see them together. We get to see that they know each other, that they get along well. So it makes sense that he would go and be a junior engineer.
Exactly. Yeah.
Loved. And Sky mentioned, welcome to Space Station Trash Can on Fire. If you haven't seen that movie, you need to look it up. It's, like, basically, like, the difference between TNG and Deep Space Nine, and it's hilarious. Okay, any last thoughts on this one?
No, Kai, thank you. I'm very glad to know that.
Good.
I was actually worried that, like, next episode it'd be like, that didn't actually happen.
No, it is good reassuring. It's adorable. Accession is the next one.
Yeah.
I hate this episode. I love this episode. So this is the episode where basically a 300-year-old light sail ship, which we had seen those before from Bajor, comes through the wormhole with Akoram Lon, who's a poet who disappeared 200 years ago. He basically is like, what's up, bitches? I'm the emissary. And everyone's like, what? And then Sisko's like, woo, all right, cool. I don't have to do this anymore.
Thank goodness.
And he's like, take it, whatever, I don't care. And then Akoram Lon reinstates the Bajoran caste system, which is where all of our anxiety goes through the roof. And then Sisko realizes that he does need to step up, and that all of this is, like, really a test by the prophets. And I have many thoughts. What do you think?
Much anger. Much not like. This was, I did not like this at all. I could say of a hate love. It was a really good episode, just from storytelling, from characters, from particularly character development for Sisko. But the actual thing of, I had a really, really hard time with Kira and the Bajoran population in general in this one. And I don't mean to put down anybody who has faith. I find faith fascinating. I think it's awesome that when people have it. But this was not cool. This was just a case of like people being sheep, and like it was really uncomfortable because this guy comes in and is like, I am here from 200 years ago and I am now your emissary. And they're all like, oh, yay, okay, we will now do what you say. And he's like, you will all return to what you want to do. And they're like, oh, yay, okay. Like, my great 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 grandfather was an artist and I am now an artist too.
I know.
Or like, you were once my best friend. Yesterday you were my best friend, and today I'm going to stand up and bow down and give you my chair. They're like, not. I didn't get it at all. It was very frustrating, and
yeah, very frustrating.
That's how I felt.
I think it's a, like you said, well written, very well written episode. Hard to watch, but the theme of accepting your destiny blindly, I think, is like the theme that they get across so well, where it's like Sisko kind of accepted his role without a ton of thought and just kind of did it. And in the same way, the Bajorans are like, okay, cool, we'll do this caste thing now because this old dude who we have revered as a great thinker of our society has come and told us to do the thing. And then learning to reject that, whereas Sisko learns that his role is to be the emissary, and that this was like a good challenge for him is very good. I just think it's phenomenal.
Yeah, it is. And it seems like, emissary wise, Sisko, first of all, when he first gets that role, he takes a very hands-off approach because he doesn't understand it necessarily, he doesn't want to be it, so he doesn't do anything with it. Whereas this guy, which I think is probably the point, is that, this guy who comes in who is Bajoran and understands the emissary idea on a much deeper level, culturally, comes in and is like, I am the emissary, therefore I shall really be somebody to you and do things and make actions. Whereas Sisko's like, I feel like he forgets he's the emissary until like Kira mentions it, or someone comes asking for a blessing. He was like, oh, right, okay. Yeah. So there's like a whole, it seems like that's why he's best suited for the job.
Yeah. I think I can't let the chat go on without pointing out Cairo's hilarious joke that blind destiny doesn't fly, much like Kira's birds. She's just a really bad artist. It's like what she has to face.
Yeah, but also it's like, come on, Kira. Like,
no.
Just because someone tells you have to be an artist because of this really outdated system, doesn't mean that you have to do it. Like, it was very confusing.
And I think, though, like, it breaks my... Yeah, I agree. Like, it breaks my heart to watch Kira because she's just trying to be a good Bajoran. And, and this idea that Sisko is a little bit... and I think some people are kind of talking about this in the chat, is like, he kind of doesn't do a lot. They bring him to do that, like, blessing, and he, like, kind of remembers it, and, he's trying to be an emissary, but he's not actively involved with Bajor.
Right.
And so, to some extent, they welcome someone who comes in and is like, all right, guys, like, I'm gonna emissary the crap out of Bajor right now. Right.
And I get that, yeah.
But I think the big growth we get for Kira, which, again, is and something I appreciate doing this chat with you, is seeing these threads and how long-term they are and how Kira's perspective has changed over the years. And I think this is really a seminal episode for her realizing how much she values her job on the space station and how valuable her relationships are there. And so it's a good episode for that.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, and a lot of people were kind of calling, like, this is, the Bajorans do take this very seriously. This is a dictation from their prophet, and so they take it seriously. And so I kind of made the comment myself. I'm usually not a big fan of the Bajoran episodes, the emissary line with Sisko, but I just think, like, this is such a good episode for his full-on crisis of just like, okay, do I step up? Do I want this? I have an out. Like, what do I do? And I just think it's really, really good.
Yeah. No, I love that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope Kishore is still in the chat, because we're going to talk about rules of engagement next. Oh, last thing, real quick. Before we move on to that one, Keiko's back, and O'Brien and Bashir have to put their toys away. Sad face. We don't want to break up the team.
I had legitimately forgotten about Keiko, to be honest.
The bromance is strong. Yeah. I think O'Brien did too, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah, because they literally don't mention her, except maybe one throwaway line in the past, like, what, season and a half?
Yeah. I mean, but credit, to the actor, like, they, particularly Keiko, they do have chemistry, and they do, and you can see O'Brien torn, where he's just like, oh yeah, I have to be a parent and a husband again.
Yeah.
Shit. But my toys.
Yeah.
And I think, and I'm curious your thoughts on this, but I think this is where I personally enjoy Keiko as a character, but I think that this is where people started to really dislike her, because she actively took away from O'Brien and Bashir party time.
Gotcha. Yeah. So. Well, I mean, seeing them together is really fun. So seeing Bashir and O'Brien together is really fun. So from an actual viewership enjoyment standpoint, I could see not liking her for that, but I don't dislike her as a character.
Right.
If that makes sense.
Agreed. Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Also, hi, Emilaric. Thank you for subscribing. Yeah, it's a good, they'll find their balance. Okay, last one we got to get to, rules of engagement. So this is one of these weird storytelling episodes where we basically flash back while Worf is on trial for blowing up a what he thought was a Klingon warship, but was actually a civilian vessel, and he basically, they're like, you trying to hurt our empire? And he's like, no, but maybe I was. And they were like, yeah, maybe you were. Is that? I think that's pretty much it. And they basically were like trying to frame him and set him up and throw him under the bus to try to smear the Federation. So what'd you think of this one? This is a weird storytelling episode, because it's like weird.
It was weird, but we have established that we were talking a lot about what I don't like this time, but the trial episodes never been my favorite. But I did actually appreciate the way this was told, because it sort of broke that up a little bit.
That's fair.
They did these sort of the flashbacks and then the fourth wall breaking, which I thought was really interesting. I didn't hate it. I wasn't sure what to think about it, because it seems like such a comedic trope sometimes. Like, if you think about the sitcoms that do that now, and like,
yeah, Professor Noor mentioned that. Yeah, The Office. Yep. Yeah,
exactly. And so I wasn't sure about it, but I didn't hate it. I thought it was interesting and fun to watch. But yeah, I mean, just Worf, he cannot catch a break.
I know. Dude needs a hug, man.
Yeah. I will volunteer.
Yeah. This is a tough one. And I mean, it's an interesting storytelling episode. I think the breaking the fourth wall, the flashbacks, like you said, in terms of the tropes of trials, this one is a little bit more unique, which makes it a little bit more watchable if it's not kind of you're trying to piece it together as well. What'd you think of O'Brien in this one?
Oh yeah, that was tense. I sort of liked that they forced him to as a character development thing, they forced him to get to that place of admitting that he would not have done that. Because you can tell he doesn't want to throw Worf under the bus. Like, he really values their relationship, and but he has to tell the truth, and they sort of hedge him in to get to that answer. And it was interesting in that, you know, we've talked about this before, where O'Brien just doesn't have those aspirations to be in that sort of leadership position. And I felt like this was sort of establishing that even though he might have done things differently, like, Worf was the one in command, and he made those decisions, and it was, you know, there's no universe where O'Brien would have been in that position. So I thought it was a strange thing, but also,
which is kind of where, like, that's kind of where O'Brien ends it, right? Is that they kind of push him to the point where he's just like, no, I wouldn't have done that, but I don't know what it's like to be in that position. Like, I can't
exactly
speak to that. I haven't sat there.
Things look very different when you're in the chair.
Exactly. Yeah. And Umbra said, O'Brien doesn't want to lead. He just wants to fix stuff. This is true.
Yeah.
That's why we love it. Yeah, and them, I mean, I think, too, it's a neat plot twist where Sisko realizes what had happened. Klingons.
The end of the day, last hour evidence comes rolling in. Thank you, television.
Yep. But again, it's like you said, Worf can't catch a break. It's like the Empire wants to shame the Federation. Oh, we'll use Worf for that, and it's just so crappy. And
it's so crappy. I did want to just give him a big hug at the end of this episode. It's like, you're okay. It's fine.
No. Yeah, exactly. He just needs a hug. Okay. Any final thoughts as we wrap it up? If anyone had thoughts in the chat, it's a good episode. Like, I think it's a good episode. It's just, you just start to wear down on how Worf has to put it.
I know, it felt really smashed together close with the other Worf episodes in this set. That's all. And I didn't quite understand what they were trying to accomplish, really. I mean, other than I don't know. The trial was a way of us getting more insight into, as if we needed more insight into Worf's inner turmoil. I don't know, you know?
Yeah. But I think, too, you know, and again, no spoilers, but just seeing the Klingon conflict continuing.
Yeah.
You know, we're still getting that.
Bubbling up. Was this the one with the mines? No.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
I think so. Yeah. So so it's definitely.
Yeah. So setting. Yeah.
We're coming up on that. Okay. So that's it for this week's round of episodes. Next week, we have a special guest joining us, Mike Chen, who is the author of the recently released adventure superhero book We Could Be Heroes, and who contributed to the Empire Strikes Back from a Certain Point of View set of short stories, which I highly recommend if you haven't checked those out. Will be joining us to geek out about Deep Space Nine. We're going to be finishing season 4. So we've got 8 episodes ahead of us. Hard Time, Shattered Mirror, The Muse, For the Cause, To the Death, The Quickening, Body Parts, and Broken Link. So starting with a O'Brien Must Suffer episode and just really rounding out the season. Hard Time sucks. I'm just
so excited.
Get that out there right now. That's a tough one. But yeah, Quickening, Body Parts, some really good episodes here. So Mike is very excited to join us. He'll be on the chat with us next week. And thanks, Samantha. Thank you, everyone, for being here. Super fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, love to see everyone. All right, until next time. See ya.
Bye.